And good. Oh, I forgot. I forgot to put my green screen down. Oh no! I usually go for a checklist. Awesome! I can event. Magic will now happen. Brilliant. Well, anyway, this is my study. Welcome to my study. You can see there is a clock. That side. There's some stuff on the walls. There's an orrery above my head, which is quite cool. There's some spaceship models. Hey, there we go. The entire world has been destroyed. Apologies for that. I usually check that. There we go. Ta-da! And now while the green screen thing tries to adjust itself, which isn't quite doing very. Oh dear, it's all gone. So you can tell I've missed some streams because I'm not in my usual routine. Ah dear. No, that's not right because that's computers. Why is that glowing in the corner now? It wasn't glowing in the corner before. Oh, I haven't got a green shirt on this one. It's all gone wrong. It's a complete disaster. Yay, never mind. I never claimed to be good at this. Right, hang on. Let me just see if I can sort out this green thingy because it's going to irritate me. Computers, why does stuff change when you don't change your own stuff? I never understood this. I tested this. I believe it or not, I did test this earlier on because I do some checks. I believe I do some checks. Believe it or not. Let's just. Nope, that's definitely the wrong way. Let's go that way. That'll go. Apart from I'm flickering now. Computers. I don't know. Nope, no, that's definitely the wrong way. Tiny bit more. No. So it's oddly sensitive. Let me just buzz those off of me. Maybe it's the angle I've got those things on. I don't know. Anyway, it's a lighting hotspot. Well, I've got these buzzed off at an angle, but they're not. No, I can't do that because that'll screw everything up. That'll do. Boosterized. Yeah, it is. I mean, I've bounced. I don't know what I've done. Maybe it's because I've got a green T-shirt on. That is a schoolboy error. Hang on a minute. If I do that up, does that help? I'm gonna have my collar up. This is brown. The brown's not normally a problem. So I've got my diffusers. I have my diffusers are diffusing. My flux capacitor is fluxing. It's just, it doesn't want to work tonight. I don't know what's wrong with it. Yeah, there is a hot spot there, isn't it? Where is it? It's up here. So what's it bouncing off? Stop it. I don't know what's causing it. It's kind of gone now. It's kind of gone. I've whacked it. That's the way to do it. Now I've definitely got post-drive. Takes a moment to react actually to the new setting. Let's go back that way. There we go. I've got a green halo, but I often have a green halo. That'll do for now. I've whacked it. I've moved some things around. Anyway, welcome on and welcome back to the not very professionally produced writing community stream. Percussive engineering, that's exactly what it was. Right, anyway, the chat's been moving on dramatically since I started, so I need to now do my roll call, which is going to take me ages because everybody's actually here. Right, anyway, so welcome back, everybody. Commander JR1988 is here, Haunted Low is here, Dr. Quest MD is here, Mad Monksoft is here, Clinton Commander Terra Firma is here as well. Now the chat has just moved down again. Stop it. Nim Dustgrin is here, the Shiny Red Flag is here. Yay! The Harkonnens are here, fresh. Oh, hang on. No, I haven't done Wintermute. Wintermute will catch up. The Harkonnens are here, fresh from the invasion of Arrakis, of course. The Arrakis is here as well, fighting off the Harkonnens. This is good. Right, Scotty. Sean is here. Sean, my fellow Scotsman. Excellent. Well, I'm not a Scotsman, but yeah, I feel an affinity with the Scots. The Wintermute GB is here, of course. The Shadow Wife is here. Big 39 GT is here. Stumpy is here. DJ Scooby is here. Winnie 1974 is here. Everybody's here. Gelly Baglar is here. It's all gone amateur. It has. S. Callahan is here. Dru-ids, have you experienced Grounded Citizen yet? 3.17. I haven't. No. I need to do it. Presumably, I need to update my Star Citizen. I'll have to do that. Alan is here. Excellent, Alan. And hopefully I haven't missed anybody all the way through now. And the real Martigan is here as well. When more Star Citizen, that will be Friday, as long as all things go to plan. No spaceships spawn. Oh dear, it's a bug, is it? Excellent. Oh well. It's PTU wave. Okay, so now you're using acronyms. I don't know what they mean. I think that's permanent something universe, isn't it? But there we go. How many teeth do I have left? Yeah. Well, okay. So teeth. Okay. So I saw somebody comment in somebody was commenting in the chat whether or not tonight's topic would be about teeth. I'm not talking about teeth. Because no, I've got a problem. Apologies for cancelling last week's stream because I was in a bit of pain again. And when did I go to my dental appointment? I can't. Was it last? All the days are the same. But yeah, no, I've got to have another tooth out. It's like, really? So what's happened is that when my wisdom tooth that I did have out back in January was still in my head, as teeth normally are, apparently when it was in situ, and we did discuss this, my dentist, because a few people have basically said, no, your dentist has ruined your teeth. No, it's not. Fortunately, we did discuss this. Was it at 2:30? No, it wasn't, but that's a good joke. Which I did make as well, with debut. So apparently what's happened, and we did discuss this at the time, and he said it's a risk, but we won't know until we get the wisdom tooth out, is that the wisdom tooth came through at such an angle that it impacted the tooth, the molar next along. And he said we can't tell from the x-ray whether or not the molar itself has been damaged by the impacted wisdom tooth or not. So we've got the wisdom tooth out. And it all looked kind of okay. Until last week, and then the revised X-ray started showing up that no, the molar has been too badly damaged by the impacted wisdom tooth, so it's got to come out as well apparently. So hopefully once that's done, and then I've recovered from that again, it's like really, I shall be back to full health and full power. So there we go. So apologies, I wasn't in a fit state to do any streaming last month. I wasn't, to be honest, even on my Star Citizen stream, I wasn't actually in a fit state to be streaming either, but I was so dosed up with painkillers. I was probably even more eccentric than I normally am. So I don't know if anybody actually noticed, but I was slightly out of it because I'd had quite a lot of painkillers, and B, I'd had quite a lot of brandy as well, which apparently is really good for teeth. So my mum tells me. Whether that's got any truth in it whatsoever, I have no idea, but I enjoyed it. So there we go. So not teeth, but apologies for the absence, and obviously apologies for those of you who missed me on Friday for Star Citizens. I do apologise for missing my streams. It's outrageous behaviour, isn't it? And obviously the Saturday retro stream as well. So I've not had a good week streaming. I only managed one stream last week, which wasn't good, and. You were so out of it. It was your No Man's Sky stream. Maybe I shouldn't have uploaded that one because I was like, "Isn't life wonderful? I love you guys," which was quite funny. Anyway, so let's go for a beer. Anybody want a kebab? So it was all a bit of a disaster. So I had a bit of a disastrous streaming week. But hopefully we're back. How did uni go? So the good thing is my son has made a decision. Bam, bam, bam. He's put down the Heriot-Watt University up near Edinburgh, just southwest of Edinburgh, I think it is. Am I hepped up on painkillers? No. I'm hopefully back to my what I dangerously regard as my normal self at this point in time. This is the normal eccentric level of normalness that I subscribe to. So yes, I'm fairly normal. But yeah, Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh is basically now his first choice. He was very impressed. Actually, I was very impressed with the university. A, the campus is nice, and B, they've got a beer society. Tick. So that was a positive. They've got their own lock. I mean, that's quite cool, isn't it? How many universities have got their own lock, for goodness sakes? That's quite impressive. So that was good. So he's put down that university as his primary choice, and a bit of society. I know that's a plus. Well, I think it's a plus. He seemed to think it was a plus. But so yes, that was quite good. So yeah, so I mean, it's a long way to Scotland from here. It was oddly enough, some people have spotted this on Twitter. It was exactly. I mean, and I kid you not, because I checked it on the trip computer. It was exactly 500 miles there, and it was 500 miles back, because obviously distances don't change. So you can imagine the hilarity that ensued once we worked this out, because my son and I get on really, really well, and we're always mucking about in the car and making up lyrics to songs on the fly as best we can when we're in the car. So of course, when we get to the halfway point, it's a bit of Bon Jovi. We're halfway there. Whoa. And then there's this thing on the internet where you change "living on a prayer" to something else that sort of rhymes. So it could be Lincoln on a bear, or lizard on a chair, or something like that. So we did all that sort of stuff. So of course, when we finally get to Scotland, then it's obviously the Proclaimers. Everyone knows that, right? Saw your proclamation on Twitter. Yeah, exactly. So we drove 500 miles, then we drove 500 more. We literally did actually do that. So that's quite funny. And I love Scotland. Scotland is just a brilliant place compared to where I live. And I'm hoping to retire to Scotland in maybe a couple of years. Is my kind of plan at the moment. We're working on that, so we'll see how it goes. But that's hopefully a long time. Then I can devote myself 100% to doing writing and creative stuff, which obviously I can't do at the moment because I'm still working. Blast. Plus this ridiculous requirement to actually earn money. It's so annoying. And drinking beer. Yeah, drinking beer is good. Retiring at the age of 30. I wish I was 30. Yeah, I'm not. But it's a plan. It's a plan, and best laid plans and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, young Josh will be off to university in September. Is the current plan. So yeah, a bit weird. You don't want to wish to be something. You're fine. But I've only just got my super mega fast internet. Yeah, I know. Well, I'll be enjoying that for a couple more years at the very least. But we on a semi-serious note, I am attempting to retreat a bit from the busyness of life. I want a simpler lifestyle. I don't want all this. The busyness of the world, that sort of stuff. I'm aspiring to a simpler type of life. I still want my technology around to do various bits and pieces, and I'll still keep my classic cars and various other bits and pieces. But certainly where I live in the southeast of England is becoming so overcrowded, and so busy and so oversubscribed in virtually everything that I'm just looking for a way to kind of get out. So we'll see how successful I do. How does she who must be of age feel about Scotland? Unfortunately, Sean, she is the leading light in this thing. She basically, if we could go tomorrow, we would. So the trick is that we've got to be able to find a way to look after ourselves and not be a burden on the state when we get there. So because I don't think that would be very good, and that wouldn't be fair. So we are planning to be a highly contributory part of the Scottish economy when we get there, but we're still working out exactly what that's going to look like. So it's working. Commander Glenn says overcrowded. Here's the Los Angeles megapolis. Look at you. Yeah, I appreciate that, but I grew up in the countryside, and I must admit I find it increasingly hard work dealing with the oversubscription of an increasing population. So there we go. We will welcome you with open arms. Well, that's good. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I've been on holiday to Scotland quite a few times and spent some time up there now, so I'm not sort of jumping into it with it'll be absolutely fine. All that sort of stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff I'm aware of. We've sort of been adopting Scotland as a sort of spiritual home for the last sort of nearly 10 years now. So We are slowly working on that. But there we go. Huddersfield Uni has a series of locks, says Wintermute TV. Excellent. I'm envisioning future Higara novels still sporting a heavenly aura. So yes, there will definitely be some of that and some copious locks. There will be some locks. I was very inspired by oddly enough, one of the scenes in Shadewood wasn't Scotland inspired, but it certainly was north of England. I think I'm trying to remember where it was. There's a place called the Jorvik Viking Centre, I think. I'm just going to look it up because it's a sort of place where things do end up in your novels. Is it Jorvik Viking Centre? Yeah, Jorvik Viking Centre. It's actually in York, so it's north. That's right. So Sean already knows about it. Alan knows about it. The Jorvik Viking Centre. So that's for me. That's up north. I know that York is quite a long way. It's not north compared to Scotland, but it's north compared to where I live. And I was on holiday there. Now, in the Jorvik Viking Centre, at least a couple of years ago, there was a glass cabinet. Okay, there was a glass cabinet in there, inside which is the skeleton, or at least was, a skeleton of a young Viking girl, young woman, and the inscription on the outside doesn't, basically tells you that she was young. She was honoured in some sort of burial. We don't really know why. Here's a few things that were buried alongside her, and da 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 da. Okay, and I remember thinking, looking at this skeleton, thinking, well, you died 1,500 years ago. We don't know why you died, why you were buried, why you were honoured, all this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, great way to end a book. And I actually wrote the ending of Shadewood 4, my last book, based on that skeleton that was in that museum. And for those of you who've read the end of Shadewood will know that that particular scene, and it's inspired directly by the Jorvik Viking Centre. So for those of you who know the scene will know what I'm talking about. Others, you'll have to go and read the book to find out. But sometimes you visit things, you just go, that's just perfect. I'm going to use that as a writing thing. So that's quite good. So I have a heavenly aura. Yes, apologies. Yeah, I've seemed to have once again managed to muck up my my green screen, which is odd because I don't know. Don't know what I've changed, but there we go. If you haven't been to the Jorvik Viking Centre, I can definitely recommend it. It was very interesting. Winnie Nightingale, I know that scene. So yes, no spoilers, obviously, because some people may not have read it. But that particular one was inspired by that, a physical thing. Now, Scotland will doubtless inspire all sorts of stuff. In fact, it probably already has, certainly some of the landscape sort of stuff. Because I've also, I've been to the Highlands of Scotland. I went down to the Isle of Skye, which is all quite mystical stuff. Actually, some really, really cool things. There's a brilliant sort of derelict castle in that direction, which I can't remember the name of now. I'd have to go and look it up. But it's basically a castle, but it's got this hole in one of the walls, which is virtually perfectly circular, and you just look at it, and it's got the lock kind of behind it. With a castle wall that's totally circular. You could just instantly in your writer's head, you're going, it's a portal to the time back 1,000 years or whatever it is. It just looks like a portal, okay? And my brain's working overtime. So there's lots of places like that. I mean, you can't turn around for 5 minutes in Scotland without bumping into a castle. It's really quite weird. How the Scots had time to make so many castles, I haven't quite figured out. But and half of them are still standing. Half of them have fallen down. There's riddled with all sorts of castles and kind of medieval stuff up there. So it's really, really good. Wait until you stand in the ring of Broger at dawn. Okay, I've got to look that one up. So I'll add that one to the list. An inspiring landscape, and I aspire to get to the inspiring landscape. So that's a plan in years to come. We'll see how it goes. But there we go. Anyway, right. That's what has brought you up to date with my position. Where are we? Is there a topic today, Fez Physician? Well, we're quite early for the topic. It's only 19 minutes into the stream. We're still waffling away. It's Brodgar Sassenach. Okay. So Sean says, Brodgar. Yeah, so pronunciations is now something. Actually, Sean, you may be able to answer me something. Now, I was listening to, and I love the Scottish accent, by the way, because it I don't know quite what it's. Yeah, I don't know how. Different people describe the Scottish accent depending on where they come from. To me, the Scottish accent always sounds quite well, at least the ones in Edinburgh anyway, sounds quite enthusiastic. The ones in Glasgow tend to sound a bit more aggressive to me, but the ones in Edinburgh tend to sound really enthusiastic. And I did notice that they put the phrase "just now" at the end of everything, which was striking me as quite, because I was listening to all these sort of lecturers talking about the university, and they were always putting this little phrase on the end. Of course. Well, this isn't open just now, and it's just like just now. It's like everything was just now. So it was okay. So the Edinburgh accent sounds posh, does it? Right. I just realised that just now. So just now seems to be a thing in Edinburgh. I don't know. It's I listen to these things and I spot them because I my problem is, and I get into trouble sometimes with this, because I do mimic accents, and I probably don't do it all that well sometimes, but I like accents. I like listening to a different way people speak, and because that to me. Is quite, but I did have to tune myself in, because we did go to a Premier Inn. We stayed overnight, and there was quite a brusque, shall I say, Scottish lady behind the reception desk. It wasn't quite Hootsman, what's going on, but it was close to unintelligible for me. Because she spoke really, really quickly and in quite a heavy accent. And so my son and I really didn't understand what she was saying. And she clearly didn't really understand what we were saying a lot of the time. It was quite funny because we had to sort of slowly slow each other's speech down so we could actually communicate with each other. So it was funny. But, I do like those accents. And oddly enough, at the university, most of the people there were I presume Scottish, but there was an Irish guy as well who was one of the lecturers. So suddenly you've just about tuned into Scottish, and then there's this rich Southern Irish accent suddenly comes in as well. It's like I've got to recalibrate my brain, because it was quite funny. So and like you say, some of the different words as well used for different things, which is quite weird. If we ever went straight into the topic without waffling, I'd be deeply concerned about what's happening. Yes, that would be my safe word, wouldn't it? You guys would know. I'm either being accosted or held ransom. Right tonight, guys, we're going straight to the topic. It's like, okay, if I ever, tell you what, let's agree this in advance. So if I ever get held ransom, or kidnapped or something, and I'm told to stream as if everything is normal, all right? What I'll do is I'll come on and go, and tonight's topic is... straight away at the beginning of the stream, and then you'll know. Okay, then you'll know. Dear. Don't forget, Kirk is Scottish for church. Kirk, yes. So I made the mistake of one day of pointing out to a Scottish friend a book written entirely in Scots. She's from Edinburgh and scoffed at it. Dinner fash. Yes, there was some dinner fash. And havering, which I assume means being indecisive. Is that what havering means? So there's a whole new lingo that I've got to figure out when I go up to Scotland. But that's all part of the fun. That's all part of the fun. I didn't just get what you're talking about. No, I don't either. So never mind. By the Summer Isles a few years back, and the local sounded more. Well, that's it's accents are interesting actually, because you can, of course, sort of judge people on accents, can't you? Quite a lot of people judge me on my accent and assume I'm outrageously posh, which isn't really true. I'm not really posh at all. But people think I'm posh because I sound a bit. I sound awfully southeast. Okay, yeah. And of course, one can ham it up if one needs to get oneself along with various different individuals in the world, and speak as well as one may. Of course, if one's challenged too. So. But I'm not. I'm not really posh. I suppose I was taught to speak in a certain way, through school and various other bits and pieces. So, but your accent, and of course, wherever you are, tends to be the place where there isn't an accent, is there? Because that's how people speak normally. Everybody else speaks oddly. Okay. Channeling my inner Rees-Mogg, heaven forbid, dear. Haver means to speak nonsense just like you're doing now. So I'm actually havering. This is excellent. Okay. Actually, it doesn't mean indecisive. It just sort of means I'm not posh. I was just taught to speak properly. Yes, exactly. Because the thing is, in my life, I've been exposed to and lived in quite a lot of different social kind of environments. I have been exposed to and lived alongside some actually genuinely posh people. Okay, so I know how they talk and I know how they act. But likewise, I spent a lot of my student life living in really quite dodgy places. So I know what that's like, and I can depending on what I want to do, I can kind of blend in. And I can kind of I know what you mean, mate. No worries. And it's quite funny. So yeah, are you aware of an increase of anti-English feelings in parts of Scotland? So there is there has been. I've never experienced it myself. I've always found everybody I've ever spoken to in Scotland very, very charming. Far more so actually than the southeast of England, shall I say? I think a lot of it, as anything, comes down to how you treat other people, particularly initially. I will always give people the benefit of the doubt when I first meet them. If they choose to decide that, okay, here's a posh English git, and I'm gonna single them out for abuse, that's kind of their business, all right. And I'll back off. I've never had a problem, and I under fire, I'm quick to say, actually, I'm not English anyway. I might sound English, but I'm not actually English. I'm actually Canadian. So I just happened to be born. Well, I wasn't even born in England. I was born in Canada. I grew up in England. So. So yeah, but I know there's that sort of Scotland, England thing that there's always been some historical stuff, but I don't know. I've never encountered it anywhere I've been, but I certainly can't say it isn't there. I've always found Scotland extremely well. In fact, I found Ireland very welcoming as well. In fact, I don't think I've been anywhere as a country or a culture where I haven't found myself welcome. The only place I can think of in my entire life where I felt ill at ease was in East Berlin during before the wall went down, and that was a very, very, very unusual situation, as I think I mentioned on the stream before. So that's the only time I've been somewhere where I felt actually in danger. I've been to a late at night in a few towns up and down the UK at sort of pub closing time or chucking out time. That's quite dangerous, but that's just because people are drunk. So I don't know. I'm aware that there's always some cultural stuff, but I've never encountered it, and I genuinely believe that most people are reasonably decent, and I'll always give people the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. So I don't know. What do you think, guys? Hopefully that's good. Never realised I was a Canadian. Yes, I was born in Vancouver. I've never come across any anti me or anti-English sort of stuff. I don't know. So there we go. Go English disguised and check out the true vibes in Scotland. So we'll see. I mean, I've I mean, you get this in England. To be honest, between the north and the south, because us southerners are soft and and useless, and the northerners are well hard, they'll come up here, your pansies, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's always been there, and even in Kent, you've got people from the north part of Kent. In an area called the Medway Towns, speak differently to people who live in the south part of Kent, where I am, and so we're posh and they're not, and etc. So it's just like, really, So I think you can invent these regional divides quite easily, but I always approach it from the perspective of, okay, we're from different parts of the world, but who the hell cares about that? I always give people a chance. I try not to prejudge just because you happen to speak differently to me. I mean, I like meeting new people, so we'll see how it goes. But there we go. Them Southerners, yeah, exactly. Those people over there who speak very slightly differently to us can't possibly have anything in common with us, can they? But there we go. So I like muffins and maple syrup. Then no, I'm a waffle guy. You should know that by now. North part of Kent splitters, yeah, exactly. Well, there is this thing about the River Medway in Kent. I mean, this is a very, very small aside, because I think, and I don't know which way around it is, some people who, if there's anybody in the chat who does actually live in Kent, not too far away from me, if you're born on one side of the River Medway, you're called a man, or presumably woman, of Kent. And if you're born on the other side, you're a Kentish man or a Kentish woman. And I don't know I don't know which side of the river it is, and I don't know what it means, but I've heard this, and it's like, oh yeah, well you're from east of the river, or you're from west of the river. It's like, it's a river. It hasn't got magical properties, and it's just like, what if you were born in the river? Yeah, well, that's a very good question, Vizition. That's a very, very, very good question indeed. I don't know anybody who would has been born in the River Medway. I'm not sure anybody would survive being born in the River Medway, but that's the thing. It's like, oh yeah, well those guys over there, they're from the west. The people of the west, they go, oh no, those guys, yeah, they're from the east. It's like, really, just human beings. The difference between our DNA is so small. But there we go. So yeah, so I would hope I could go anywhere in the UK and just, talk to people. I would hope. Scallahan, Northerners, Midlanders revert to call Kent's another word that sounds like Kent, but not a very nice word. Well, this is the thing. I mean, is it literally though? All this. I mean, I suppose this comes back to, and we're not on topic yet, but we're kind of moving slowly towards the topic. This is a sort of tribalism thing, isn't it? And we talked about that on stream, how we're very predisposed to making a clan, if you like, or making a group, or making a gang. And defending it against the others who are obviously over there and they're different to us because they're over there and they're different to us. It's like, we all know the Shire is Central England and Mordor is Birmingham. Because I mean, it's easy, isn't it? And I mean, I've done it. And to be honest, I did it over the weekend. That we were driving north, obviously on the M6, and we went past Birmingham. I said to myself, oh well, there's Birmingham, Birmingham for God's sake. In a sort of Alex Guinness sort of, you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum of billet. I'm sure there are parts of Birmingham that are perfectly fine, but it doesn't look all that nice from the M6 elevated section, to be fair. I suppose that's colouring my impressions of it. I've never been to Birmingham for any particular reason. I've been to Coventry a couple of times, but I've never really been to Birmingham, so I don't know anybody from Birmingham. I'm sure Birmingham is a perfectly nice place, at least in part, because there's everywhere you go, there's nice bits and there's horrible bits. Okay, so if I took you around Kent, I could show you some really, really nice bits of Kent, and then I could show you some really, really ropey, dodgy, horrible grey bits of Kent as well. So I don't personally. I think this is an inbuilt thing. It's almost like a safety net, isn't it, for us to say, oh well, those others over there, they're trouble, and that place over there, well, you don't want to go there. That's I don't know. Why do we do it? It's a human thing, isn't it? Tribes and football is a classic. Yeah. And I see it. Football. I see it in car ownership. I see. I go along to a Volkswagen group, and it's like Volkswagens are okay, but anybody driving a Ford, I mean, they're just the devil. Scum. Ford drivers or Peugeot drivers, even Vauxhall drivers, even worse. It's like it's just a car, guys. But it's people get very, very scapegoat syndrome. That's what exactly it is. So I don't know. I try and avoid it personally. I hope I'm old enough to kind of move beyond it. And if people, I give people the benefit of the doubt. If people give me the benefit of the doubt, if they find my accent, for example, or my hat, or whatever it happens to be, or the way I am, slightly irritating or annoying to them, then fair play. I'll back away and leave you alone. But generally, I find if I give people the benefit of that, and they give me the benefit of that, within 5 minutes we're getting on fine. So that's kind of awkward. What do you think of Triumph Spitfire owners? Is this something I had to tell my dad? But it's weird, isn't it? It is weird. But nothing of that has got anything to do with the topic. That I was planning to speak about tonight, because what I wanted to do, actually, I kind of wanted to revisit this, because we have done this before, and it's kind of pertinent for me, because I've kind of got to the point in my novel where I'm in my current novel, my Hagar novel, where I kind of need to have a think about how this is going to work. So the subject, and hopefully this is quite interesting to quite a few, because it's a science fiction topic which is quite close to our heart, which is about guns. All right. So let's talk about guns and killing people for a bit, because that's nice and cheerful. Take your average space opera kind of thing. Okay, so it's go back in time a bit to the Flash Gordon series, and it's laser pistols, isn't it? Which I can only assume is basically okay. So what do we need? We want a gunfight, because everyone knows how gunfights are exciting, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's a gunfight. Well, we can't use guns. They won't have guns in the future, will they? What will they have in the future? What stuff that's just been invented? Hey, lasers are state of the art cool things. This is from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Okay, so laser. So we want something like a pistol, and we want to use the word laser in there. So how about laser pistol? Okay, so it's kind of like you end up with a gun, okay, which is a laser. Okay, now anybody who knows how lasers work would basically say laser doesn't actually make a really, really good weapon at all. Okay, because lasers just fire a beam of light. Okay, you need quite a lot of laser power to cut holes in things. The culture universe uses laser guns. Okay, so it's a standard trope, isn't it? The hero or the baddies have a gun by their side, which is usually kind of pistol shaped. So it's still got a kind of I don't know what's the anatomy of a gun. Is that's the grip and a trigger with a sort of muzzle looking thing. Which can go or it's basically pew pew, isn't it? So that's really early sci-fi. Okay, is full of quite dubious looking and impractical laser type guns. And what they usually seem to do is and Star Trek actually is one where they kind of managed to think this through a little bit further initially. Early space laser guns are very much, pew pew. They fire a beam of something, don't they? A short bolt, which is maybe about that long, which travels across through the atmosphere or through space, whatever it happens to be, at clearly not the speed of light, because you can see it move. All right. So quite what that stuff is unclear. But the kind of classic, yeah. And lasers don't make that noise. I don't know where that noise came from. I assume there's basically a Moog synthesizer in the 60s or something there, where if you dial in a certain number of settings, it goes, and somebody thought that sounds exactly like a laser gun. It's like lasers don't make any noise. So, but the laser gun was born, wasn't it? So they go bang next, says Wintermute GP. I would stick with a miniature version of a railgun. It's electronic, but still takes cartridges for the projectiles. Okay, so we'll get onto the more sophisticated stuff in time. But Culture Universe had laser guns too. But so a laser, okay. If you've got a super powerful laser, i.e. a laser that's actually capable of doing some damage, what's it actually going to do? It's actually going to operate more like a lightsaber, because it's going to burn a hole through whatever you fire it at. That's how what a laser actually does. It's dare I say it, light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, don't you know? Which I'm sure you did know. But a laser is just a beam of highly. It's what do they call it? It's not focused. It is. There's a word. All the not protons, all the photons travelling in parallel lines. Is it collimated? Something like that. I don't think that's right either. It's there's a word. Unlike a torch beam, basically, which obviously spreads out. A laser is pretty much all the photons are travelling parallel. Is it coherent? There we go. Alan's got it. I knew it began with a C. Coherent light, that's what it is. Okay, so basically your laser is loads and loads of photons all travelling in parallel lines from whatever the emitting source is. Okay, so a laser that was capable of doing damage to a human being, if you could make a portable one in the shape of a phaser pistol, wouldn't do a bolt of energy. It would be a beam, okay, which you could then slash people with. So it would be more like an infinitely long lightsaber, okay? So imagine what that would look like. Of course, it wouldn't go. It would just. It wouldn't be realistic. I played the original Elite, so I know exactly what a laser sounds like. Says Kelly Bagler. Yeah, we do have laser weapons now. We don't have handheld. Well, do we? I don't know. Handheld laser weapons. The problem with lasers has always been the amount of power it takes to produce a dangerous beam is probably more dangerous to the person firing the thing. Have you seen the size of the batteries, by the way? And the other thing is it's going to generate an awful lot of heat. So there are some practical problems. Okay, so collimated is parallel, coherent. Don't know what the accent that was. It was a wrong accent. That's what that was. Coherent means all the photons have the same wavelength. Okay, so Boeing lasers on tons temperature. So yes, you do have sort of military lasers which can shoot down. They're designed to shoot down missiles and things, I think. And Babylon 5 for beam-like cutting weapons on spaceships. So yeah, so things like that you've seen with, I think it's the Minbari have those, don't they? Whereas the Earth ships have the kind of pew-pew versions. Now the pew-pew ones don't make any sense to me at all, because they're firing some glowy stuff, aren't they? Okay, they're firing some glowy stuff, which clearly isn't travelling at the speed of light, because you can see it move. And if you're a super skilled space pilot, you can dodge them. Which doesn't make any sense for a laser beam, okay? It clearly isn't a laser beam. So, take Star Wars, for example. The blasters. They call them blasters. So maybe they're not laser guns. I don't know if there's any... I should have looked this up earlier, but I don't know if there's any lore about the blasters in Star Wars. But they fire a bolt of energy, don't they? Quite what that bolt of energy is actually composed of is unclear, because it can't be energy itself, because it would have to travel at the speed of light, which means you couldn't dodge it. So pew-pew weapons fire plasma, so maybe it's a bolt of plasma, okay, which is obviously extremely dangerous stuff. The funny thing again is how do you make a bolt of plasma move and stay in its, maintain its integrity as it moves towards the target, because plasma is is basically superheated gas. Okay, that's basically had its electrons stripped. It's extremely difficult stuff to keep stable. So I'm not sure really about the technical feasibility of a plasma gun. Unless anybody who's completely wise about this stuff can tell, because it doesn't sound to me like a very effective weapon. Because surely, if you fire a bolt of plasma, the plasma, even if it's contiguous when it emerges from the gun, it's going to need some sort of electromagnetic wrapper around it in order to keep it as plasma as it's moving. So what's generating that electromagnetic field between you and the target? It seems a very, very complicated way of making a not very effective weapon, because a small blob of plasma this big, how much energy does that contain? I don't know. And how do you create the plasma in the first place? Etc., etc., etc. Okay. Okay, so a gentleman here says there are videos online of people at home making plasma cannons, though. They do launch in a ballistic trajectory. Do they? Okay, I'm going to have to check that out. Okay, so feather of the cannon. So Star Wars blasters should really work more like flamethrowers. I kind of feel they should, because I think if you're firing a stream of plasma, that kind of makes more sense. And a few shows, and DJ Scooby's already gone there with Firefly, basically say, okay, space sci-fi weapons are too high tech. We'll junk those and we'll go back to ballistic weapons that are old school, reliable. So you go back to guns and sort of westerns in space on the spaceship. Now, is that realistic for where future weaponry is going? So Star Wars blasters are plasma weapons. Okay, so electromagnetic field's kind of like a railgun. Now, I suppose if you start thinking about it a little bit more seriously, a space weapon, if you're going to fight in an atmosphere which is compatible with life, let's say an oxygen atmosphere, you can stick with your ballistic weapon. Okay, your classic explosive ballistic weapon. So your typical rifle, your typical pistol, your typical handgun. Okay, because it'll still work. All right. You might have to make some allowances for air pressure, and you might have to make some allowances for gravity and things like that, but that comes down to aiming. So basically, in an oxygen atmosphere of similar-ish proportions to the Earth, I think you'd have to be careful of. I don't know if anybody's actually ever done this, but firing a gun in a really high oxygen content atmosphere, what would happen? Because setting off fires in high oxygen content environments is a bad idea. Okay, so a gun might be quite a dangerous, a classic explosive cartridge or shell type gun might be quite a dangerous thing to use in an environment of very high oxygen. Okay, so there's the thing. But if you've got to have a gun that works in space, okay, so if you basically want to board a spaceship, or you want to attack a space station, and the space station has got people on the outside shooting back at you, you're going to be operating in a vacuum. So your classic normal projectile gun will not work in that environment, because it needs most of them, actually, not all, but most of them need atmospheric oxygen to work. Okay, so no shoot fire stick in space canoe. That's exactly right. So then there's others which make use of most modern real weapons. Yeah. So lasers are badly presented in the, when they say a laser gun. Okay, a laser gun wouldn't work the way you would see it in the movies. I don't think anybody's. I mean, maybe the Babylon 5 ship-based lasers, things like that, are sort of a kind of correct. The other thing, of course, in a vacuum, which all space things get wrong, because you wouldn't be able to see a laser in a vacuum unless you were looking directly at it, which would be a very bad thing, because it meant you'd been hit and you were probably just about to die. So you got that problem. Lasers are invisible in space. The only reason you can see lasers on the Earth is because of all the tiny little dust particles in the air that refract bits of the beam away and slowly rob the laser of its power over time. Anyway, lasers are invisible. So all these shows where you see the and you see the laser beams, no, it's not. That's not how it works. Lasers are just light. You can't see light from the side unless it's bouncing off something. And a good defense against lasers would, of course, be mirrors. It would be extremely dangerous to walk into a battlefield with a load of laser guns and everybody in mirror armor, because you'd never have any idea who you're ultimately going to hit. So that could be quite interesting. So I don't think lasers as handheld weapons are ever really going to be a thing in space or on the ground, because simpler ways of killing people will probably still work. And I think Wintermute's made the point, modern firearms would work in space, because I don't know a great deal about modern weaponry, but you can carry your propellant for the bullet and the oxygen with it in the shell, in the cartridge. So it is possible to have enough explosive material and the oxygen to oxidize it in the mechanism. So therefore you can have ballistic weaponry in space. So that's possibilities. Okay, and that's probably within our ability to do now, as Wintermute says as well. They did make a laser pistol and a laser revolver. Okay, so there we go. Soviet laser pistol. Let's check that out, because that's quite good. Be Nerf wars and spud gun. So according to this wiki, the Soviet laser pistol was a prototype handgun-shaped energy weapon designed for use by cosmonauts in a low or zero gravity environment that renders conventional firearms effective. The weapon was magazine fed and used pyrotechnic flashbulb technology to protect its beam. Okay. So did it work? I suppose is the question. It doesn't actually say. It's got a pyrotechnic flashbulb. Effective firing range was 20 meters. How dangerous was it, I wonder? Okay, so to meet the requirement, Soviet engineers designed a lamp filled with oxygen containing metallic foil or powder. And instead of magnesium, which was traditionally used in strobe lights, the laser would be fueled by zirconium, which produced 3 times more light energy. Some metal salt additives were added to match the wavelength of the flash with the range of the laser system. And a yttrium aluminium garnet crystal served as a medium where the infrared laser beam would be generated after each flash. Okay, so it was an infrared laser pistol. Wow. Okay. So okay, so that's quite good. Lockheed Martin are making laser weapons. Okay, so there are some bits and pieces which presumably there's a reason for them doing so. Then okay, so that's quite good. I suspect vacuum welding would break normal guns in space. Okay, Lockheed Martin. Okay, so let's see what Lockheed Martin. I was going to say, run that by me again. I think I was getting lost by the time we got to yttrium aluminium alloys. But there we go. Okay, so I don't know if you actually screen post camera. So here's the here we go. Here is the here is the Lockheed Martin things. Okay, so it's a ship-mounted laser weapon, which presumably directed energy. The time for laser weapons has come. Excellent. Pew Pew is here today. So high energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance. Okay, so the idea here is looks like to shoot down things from a ship. So it's not hand laser, but I suppose we could argue that technology can be miniaturized over time. Okay, I've just completely screwed up my screen there, I just noticed. Apologies for that. There we go. So that's quite interesting. So in space, large distances and high relative velocity limit the potential for space battle. So that's another thing. Space battles. We can get onto that one as well. We have to adopt a degree of suspension of disbelief in many fields. So I mean, Star Wars is a good example of that. Airplanes in space and therefore laser beams. What do they call them? They're kind of just called blasters in Star Trek. I don't know what are the shipborne. They have. What do they call them in Star Wars? They call them something lasers, turbo lasers. Turbo lasers. Let's take two cool things that have nothing to do with each other and put them together. Turbo lasers. What does that mean? That's as bad as de-throttling. Turbo lasers. Turbo lasers. Just sounds cool, doesn't it? You can tell Star Trek was written in the 70s. Star Wars, sorry, was written in the 70s and 80s. Turbo lasers. What's better than a laser? Well, clearly is a turbo laser. And then, of course, Star Trek is phasers. Because, and I think the explanation for phasers is basically the science advisors for Star Trek basically said to Gene Roddenberry, lasers can't do that. It's impossible. And if you want your show to have a bit of plausibility, lasers will be old hat by the time this stuff comes out in the 70s. So you need something else. So okay, we need something that sounds cool, like lasers, but isn't a laser because lasers can only do certain things. I know. Let's call them phasers. Federation have phasers and the Romulans have disruptors. That's very true as well. So yes, Sean says everything is better with turbo in front. It is. Turbo is one of those words that's just for those of us who are children of the 80s. Turbo is just cool. Okay, it's turbo. So that's quite good. So okay. So also quantum, says DJ wants to quantum in there somewhere. Quantum turbo lasers. They sound pretty darn devastating, don't they? Maybe we could supercharge the turbo quantum lasers. It's just totally silly. So high power. Alan is still trying to be sensible here. Good for him. High powered hand lasers can endanger aircraft by dazzling them. That is very true. Okay, so if you don't necessarily have to destroy the target, do you? You just have to incapacitate it. That's a possibility. Terribly plausible. A single device could emit a beam, harmless, knocks people unconscious, kills them, or completely disintegrates them. So yeah, so that's one thing about phasers is that's very handy. Okay, very handy phasers is that you can set them to stun, can't you? You can set them to disintegrate. You can set them to kill. You can set them to dematerialize, and all sorts of useful things that sci-fi writers would find useful in their plots. Phasers are very, very, very versatile indeed. So that's quite good. So disruptors just seem to disrupt, don't they? I don't think they do disrupt. Do disruptors have a stun setting? I can't really see the Romulans and the Klingons bothering with the stun setting because today is a good day to die, right? Today is a good day to be knocked unconscious. Isn't quite the same. Trek did have quantum torpedoes. They did, didn't they? That's right. So every so often, as a new cool word comes along, I'm surprised Star Trek didn't have turbo torpedoes, but maybe the double T wasn't going to work. Laser is an acronym, isn't it? It's light amplification for stimulated emission of radiation. Phaser, I don't know. Is phaser an acronym in the Star Trek lore? Possibly it is. He's not stunned. He's dead. He's dead, Jim. Then is it a photon? Is it a photon laser? Because that doesn't make any sense, does it? Because a laser is a photon laser. Yeah. What's a laser beam if it's not made of photons? I don't know. Phasers can warm up a rock on a cold planet so everyone can huddle around it. Well, that's true. I suppose a laser ought to be able to do that as well, Pete. Really. So I'm not sure. Phasers will make that lovely sort of noise, don't they, when you fire them? I don't know. So there's all sorts of different levels of if you stick with lasers, you can do all sorts of different. Wavelengths. So you can have ultraviolet lasers, infrared lasers. I mean, presumably you could, if you were feeling very, very nasty, you could make a gamma ray laser. That would be a really nasty thing to get shot with. So I don't know. Yeah, all sorts of things. So we have. To be fair, when you spend a lot of time looking up the advantages and disadvantages of different energy weapons, you end up with a weapon that alternates between them all to cover each one's weak. So I think there's a problem with lasers in the sense that they are, they're probably going to be quite hard to miniaturize. For handguns at the moment. I mean, it's not to say they couldn't be done. But the problem with a phaser, or handheld laser gun is that it needs to have all of the power it's going to use to generate the killing beam contained within itself. The good thing about ballistic weapons, of course, is that it's simply the explosion that causes the thing, the projectile to fly. The gun itself is only a mechanism that basically allows the explosion to happen and then channels the energy forward. That's effectively what a ballistic gun is. Whereas the actual destructive power of a laser weapon is basically how much power can the thing output and for how long. Which either means you're going to have some extremely good batteries. And the other problem with a sort of high-powered device of that type is unless it's exactly 100% efficient, which of course it can't be, it's going to generate a lot of heat. So if you start firing your laser gun willy-nilly at people, it's it's going to get hot quite fast. And that's a problem. If you're going into the plausible realm of sort of slightly harder science fiction, lasers will generate a lot of heat quite fast, which is going to be really inconvenient and quite hard to get rid of. So that's an issue. The sci-fi game Stellaris does a good job of representing all of that possible weapon in X-ray and gamma ray lasers. So those things are a possibility. I think you can allow them aboard a ship, because I don't necessarily think they would be offensive weapons, because if your ship is, I don't know, let's envisage a sort of pseudo warship in science fiction, and if you've got a laser weapon, if you fire a laser beam at a piece of metal, a fair amount of energy will be reflected off. The main damage from a laser hitting a piece of metal is going to be heat. Okay, so if the ship is good at dissipating its heat, depending on what it's made of, a laser may be quite a hard thing to do any damage to the ship with. The ship could also spin, which meant that the laser won't be able to target easily a specific piece of the ship and basically keep its heat on target, unless the laser is overwhelmingly effective and massively powerful, in which case you could destroy the target very quickly. A laser may not be the most effective type of weapon in ship-to-ship combat, because it won't necessarily be able to stay on target long enough, because you've got to have line of sight all of the time. And there may just simply be easier ways of blowing up ships than using laser beams. I can kind of see laser beams being a bit more useful for defensive purposes, i.e. shooting things down that are coming towards you, or at least rendering them useless so that you can dodge them. I don't know. So those are my kind of initial thoughts on that one. Particle beams, says Jonathan here, are more effective weapons than lasers. The advantage of electron beam, for instance, is it completely irradiates the target with X-rays from the reaction of the electrons with the target. So that's actually causing some nasty damage to the ship. So that's quite good. Okay, so Wintermute says phaser is phased energy rectification. Sean says there's recalls a film that had handheld compressed air weapons. Okay, so that's quite interesting. Not sure if it's gamma radiation, but the Harley Quinn show has a cancer gun, which might be things. So particle beams are more effective weapons. Yeah. So there's a weaponized crowd control variant using microwave energy. Okay, so that's quite nasty, isn't it? Slowly heat up your inside. Simply dispose of the heat into the beam. I don't know if that. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about the physics on that one. But I think it's the generation it's a byproduct of generating the beam that causes heat in the actual device that's generating the beam, and that's the bit that's hard to get rid of. A laser at a wavelength that you can't reflect can heat you up. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? What's a destructive? What's a good frequency to do? So Chris Viking says most of the ship-to-ship combat I've read about in science fiction was done with missiles and bomb-pumped X-ray lasers. So if you can get them on target, a bomb-pumped X-ray laser would be pretty brutal. What if some future technology can minimise the fission process, combine it in miniature shells that could be shot out like a projectile once within a certain range, change to some sort of energy weapon? That could be quite interesting. Yeah. So I mean, technology. you've got to kind of go with where it might go, and it's quite difficult. So that's right. So lasers, I think, have got some issues. I think there's still a place for ballistic weapons. So let's move on to rail guns. Okay, so rail guns, and simplifying here for the sake of discussion, rail guns are basically a ballistic weapon that's not using explosives. That's how I tend to define them. So tell me if you agree with that or not before we start talking about them. In my head, a rail gun is a ballistic weapon where the projectile is accelerated by typically electromagnetic power. So you don't need an explosion, therefore you don't need any oxygen. It's effectively an electric gun. So your projectile, which may still be a bullet, is effectively accelerated by a muzzle, which is a series of electromagnetics pulsing it forward at a very, very high speed. So a railgun, there goes, a linear motor. Microsoft always has the definition. A linear motor device typically designed as a weapon that uses electromagnetic force to launch high velocity projectiles. The projectile normally does not contain explosives, instead of relying on the projectile's high speed, mass, and kinetic energy to inflict damage. Okay, so that's just like a bullet. Okay, you could, I suppose, have a shell which would explode on contact potentially, but if you can make it fast enough, that doesn't matter. And for a handgun, a railgun maybe makes sense. Again, it comes down to power and ammunition. Now, the nice thing about a traditional ballistic handgun is that it's a totally self-contained thing. As long as you've got some ammo, you can fire. With a laser gun, you're going to run out of charge at some point. And whereas with a handgun, you can just like, well, my clip's empty, I'll put a new clip in, I'm ready to start shooting again. If your laser gun runs out of charge, that's it. You're going to have to go and recharge it somewhere. And a railgun has the same limitations, but in fact, the railgun is worse from a kind of handheld perspective, because it could either run out of ammo, i.e. things to shoot with, or it could run out of charge, either of which would render it useless. So I don't think as a handheld weapon, a railgun makes a lot of sense, again, because it's just going to, most of the time, it's not work, because it will be out of charge or out of ammunition. I mean, they're quite fun and they are high tech, but high tech doesn't necessarily mean effective in the future. So now the other thing, of course, somebody did touch on earlier on in the stream, which is, okay, you're aboard a spaceship or you're aboard a space station, okay, and you start having a firefight, okay. Now, this isn't a good idea, all right. Spaceships are designed, and space stations are designed to have lots and lots of air on the inside to basically maintain pressure. They're designed to keep a high pressure environment inside the area so you can stay alive. And the enemy that you're fighting is clearly going to be of the same opinion. They want to stay alive too. Shooting bullets around the inside of a space station or the inside of a spaceship is probably a bad idea. Not only might you hit something important inside the ship, which is doing a useful job of keeping you alive, you might also blow a hole in the side of the ship or the space station, which would allow all the atmosphere to vent into space. Now that's going to put a crimp in your battle. So ballistic weapons might be a really, really bad idea inside a space station. And you could depressurize the ship, or you could depressurize the shop as well. I don't know how that helps. It's going to be really difficult to buy stuff if the shop's depressurized, man, Microsoft. So, JL19 has got to mention the Expanse. I was going to come to the Expanse, yes, because they use sort of rubber bullets, didn't they? Kind of rubber bullets, which were bad enough to kill people, but wouldn't go through the ship's hulls. Plastic rounds, there we are. Plastic rounds are the trade-off of not being able to pierce armour. So there you go. So the problem is you'd have an arms race straight away. If you were going to board a ship, yeah, you'd instantly wear armour, which would render the bullets useless. So those are interesting tactical considerations for ballistic weapons. Excuse me. Okay, so a cricket gun from Men in Black, yeah. Noisy cricket. The Arc Flash Labs GR1 Anvil portable Gauss rifle is on sale in the US. What does that do? What's a Gauss rifle? Okay, not rubber. They would bounce. There's lots of ricocheting going on forever. Personal weapons in space. Yeah, so we're trying to sort of figure out what space weapons would actually be like in space and how effective would they be. The other thing you've got, of course, in a zero-G setting from a ballistic weapon is recoil. Okay, now recoil, if you're on the ground and you can brace yourself, okay, recoil is something you can cope with. But for any of you who've actually fired live rounds, which I've done on a few rare occasions, if you've got a big rifle, I've fired a couple of double barrel and sort of Winchester type rifles. They don't half give you a kick back, right? Okay, now when you're on the ground and you can brace yourself, when you hold the rifle in the crook of your shoulder and all that sort of stuff, they have a kick. Now if you're doing that in zero G, okay, yeah, it's not going to work. Okay. Well, it will fire, but for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So if you are holding a gun in the traditional way in zero G, you will send yourself into a cartwheel, all right? That's not going to work. So the whole mechanism of shooting a ballistic gun, holding it as a human being trying to fire at somebody, is going to be very different in a zero G environment. Okay, and potentially even in a low G environment, because if you try to let's say you had a very lightweight spacesuit and you could stand on the moon. Okay, 1/6 gravity. If you fire a gun on the moon with that kind of recoil, momentum and mass is still the same. Okay, so you still get the same equal and opposite reaction from the gun. You just haven't got the gravity holding you down on the planet to keep you secure. Okay, so you can't brace yourself in the same way. You will go backwards. Perfect counter to recoil is a de-throttler, says all the low. Slap. It would be very funny. So maybe a gyrojet system. Okay, so you need some other way to stabilize yourself. So I think there's going to be an awful lot of complexities to space combat in that sort of sense. So this is why you have recoilless weapons. Okay, so can you make a recoilless ballistic weapon? Presumably it has to have some sort of counterweight in it. How does that work? The solution is very simple: put an inertial dampener in the gun. Yeah, but then you can invent anything. Okay. Rocket launchers, yes, wouldn't work in a closed chamber. So recoilless weapons. Okay, there must be some clever design here, because you've got to have something else counteracting the force of the shot from the perspective of the person who's firing it. I don't know how that works, but. If the gun shot a bullet backwards as well as forwards, it would equal that. Well, it would. I don't want to be firing that kind of gun, though, Sean. That doesn't sound like a particularly good. I mean, you'd have to sort of hold it out to the side, then, wouldn't you? And your entire army or whatever you're in would have to sort of stand in line, making sure that nobody was standing behind anybody else would be fired. So that maybe wouldn't work. Okay, so Haunted Loaf says actually, so I believe they work by ejecting gas in the opposite direction. So that's interesting. Would that work? Would that work in space, I wonder? Something that can lock inertia and transform it into another modulation of energy could be used in an inertia dam. Well, that's true. I mean, even on the Earth, I mean, I remember pilots of the, what's that funny looking airplane the Americans had? Is it the Warthog? The one that basically one goes, that one. It's quite an ugly. Well, I don't think it's ugly actually. I think it's quite a nice looking plane, but a lot of people think it's ugly. Is it the Warthog? The A10? A10. There we go. The A10 Warthog. There we go. Basically, the pilots can't fire the gun, for too long, as I understand it, when they're flying at certain speeds, because the recoil from the gun slows the plane down too much, or something like that. Anyway. So there are practical problems even to mounting big heavy guns on planes because of the recoil. And the simple effect of physics on the inertia of the bullets travelling out the front, having the equal and opposite reaction going back. It's the A10. The real name is Thunderbolt 2, but everyone calls it the Warthog. There we go, Glenn again. So that sort of stuff. Pesky physics. It's so annoying physics, isn't it? Okay, so Haunted Love's chucked in a recoilless rifle. So such things do exist. Okay, let's say, how does that work? A recoilless rifle is a lightweight artillery system, manned portable launcher designed to eject some form of countermass, such as propellant gas, from the rear of the weapon at the moment of firing, creating forward thrust that counteracts most of the weapon's recoil. Okay, this allows for the elimination of much of the heavy and bulky recoil countering equipment of a conventional cannon. So would that work as a handgun? Maybe it would. Real recoilless weapons are big, and you don't want to stand behind them when they're firing. Okay, so that sort of suggests that maybe they won't work as handguns. These, if you want to make, and I'm talking about plausible science fiction here. So if you want to go into the realms of phasers and laser pistols, then feel free. But if you want your sci-fi to be a little bit more kind of, okay, well, how would this actually work? Space combat is something that we've never obviously in the real world we haven't really had an armed conflict in space per se, in the kind of person versus person sense, and it always makes me chuckle in things like Star Wars, in particularly when there's an awful lot of ground infantry running around with small guns, and there's spaceships flying overhead with massively powerful weapons. Why don't you just bombard the hell out of the ground first? You don't need any of these ground forces at all. It always seems, it's like there's rules in the Star Wars universe. We won't take any tactical advantage from the big guns that we've got, because we've got to give the small infantry a chance to do their thing. It kind of feels a bit odd in Star Wars. So for real handguns, I'm told that recoil isn't a problem. Humans capable of firing a well-designed handgun without losing control of it. Yes, I suppose that's true on the Earth, because you can brace now. But if you're in 0G, I think that surely becomes more of a problem, particularly if you've got the gun, like that. You are going to get a recoil from it, which is going to translate itself into rotational inertia of your body. That's going to be a problem unless you anchored yourself to something. In which case you therefore then become a bit of a sitting target. Now, would it even be a thing to fight in 0G? Would everybody go, no, that's just stupid, we're not going to do that? Because maybe it would be ship-to-ship battles only in those kind of environments. I don't know. I mean, if you want to board a hostile ship, what do you do? Do you disable it from the outside and then try and dock with it? Do you board it from a distance? Do you just go head to head with melee weapons in space? Today is a good day to die. I don't know. At least with instruction and due training, I fired a 44 Magnum rounds as a 15-year-old with instruction and could maintain control. Okay, so that's quite good. Grappling hooks and chains. I suppose you could have a smart gun with a wireless connection to a smart suit, use small EVA thrusters. So I mean, technology could come to your rescue there, couldn't it, and cater for those sort of things. A super advanced spacesuit that allows it, gyro stabilizes itself, or all those sort of things. Imagine shooting a gun in space, missing your target, and then millions of you. Well, that's another thing that I worry about. Yeah, you're quite right, Jen. I mean. You shoot a gun in space, the bullet isn't going to stop moving, is it? It's going to. I mean, I don't. A bullet isn't travelling so fast that it would. If you fired a bullet from, let's say, the International Space Station, the bullet would stay in orbit. It wouldn't have escape velocity from the Earth. It's not going fast enough, so it would just be in a slightly different orbit to the International Space Station ultimately. So if you had let's say for the sake of argument, we decided this afternoon, all of us, to pop up on a spaceship and basically go and attack the International Space Station with handguns, and we were shooting away That's right. All the bullets that we fired in that engagement wouldn't escape the Earth's gravitational pull. They'd all be in orbits around the Earth. So if we waited long enough, basically, you then a few weeks later get hit by a hail of bullets. It would be extremely dangerous. So I don't think actually having a ballistic battle in orbit around a planet is actually a very good idea. Not necessarily because it won't work there and then, but it might be really, really dangerous a few days later. It's kind of the reason that in one of the military sci-fi series I'm reading, mass drivers were outlawed. Because I suppose, well, that's it. They're dangerous because all the ordnance that missed is still travelling on some sort of trajectory, isn't it? And particularly, it's very unlikely. Even I would have thought, even big, big heavy-duty ship-to-ship weapons, that the projectile would achieve a velocity where it could it would be fast enough to leave the solar system. I mean, you'd have to accelerate your torpedo or whatever it is to, hundreds of miles per second to get it away from the solar escape velocity, let alone Earth's escape velocity. So, if you did have a war with lots and lots of ballistic weapons in space, you would make the area around the war, very, very dangerous, very, very quickly. And then, of course, because it's travelling, all that stuff's travelling in an orbit of different types around the sun, you'd make the entire solar system really, really dangerous because it'll be all this flying debris from the war of 50 years ago, which is still out there and occasionally kills people or spaceships because of because it's still out there. So in space, that stuff would be really, really dangerous. So that's why, Serviceman John, we do not eyeball it. This is a weapon of mass destruction. You are not a cowboy shooting from the hip. Yeah. Steve IMD, first time chat. Hello there. I'm sure the bullets would burn up as they enter the atmosphere. Yeah, they would. The bullets would enter the atmosphere. So anything close to the surface of the Earth would eventually deorbit and burn up. But anything that was, let's say we had to fight a geostationary satellite, the stuff would still be there. So maybe that's the reason lasers would be used, because of course the laser, once you switch it off, it's not doing anything. I mean, there's enough junk up in orbit now to be posing a danger, let alone actually having a war with bullets and stuff. I mean, there was that lovely picture of one of the space shuttle windows years ago getting hit by a fleck of paint at obviously the crazy fast orbital velocities, and that did enough damage. To the thing. Now, space is so massive. I mean, it is, but the problem with orbits is that stuff tends to come back to the same place every so often. So if you're unlucky and you travel through a particular space where there was a space battle, let's say, I don't know, 6 months ago, you might be unlucky that you've just gone through the same spot in space where the battle was, just at the same time as all the bullets that missed have returned to their original point in their orbits. Which says your spaceship suddenly gets hit by a hail of bullets that were shot 6 months ago from a space battle that's been long since over. Okay. It is possible. In the Omniverse, the missiles have self-destruction devices that activate after a certain time. I suppose that will help a bit, but actually, a self-destructing missile, what's that going to do? It's going to blow itself into a lot of small pieces, which are still travelling really, really fast. So unless the missile can completely erase itself from existence, I'm not sure that entirely solves the problem. You basically turn one dangerous fast-moving object into lots and lots of very small, dangerous, fast-moving objects. So modern torpedoes deactivate after they run out of fuel. Well, that's okay because they'll stop moving. Whereas torpedoes in space won't stop moving. They will stop accelerating. So responsible missiles were basically responsible space missiles. If they miss their target, they basically have to say, okay, I missed my target. I'm going to slowly and carefully return to the ship that launched me. I'm not kind of sure that's going to work out. The missile needs enough fuel to return. So you'd have to have responsible missiles, which I suspect isn't going to be a thing. Erased from existence, Mod. Yeah. So that things like that are a problem. are a problem. I think because you've got to be careful of gravity in that sense. So I must admit, the things in the Expanse. In the Expanse when they have the missiles coming in, and they basically use cannons, don't they? Just cannon. They're just cannons, and multi-cannons. That's the word I was looking for. Multi-cannons. Okay, they use multi-cannons to shoot down the missiles as a sort of spray of bullets. Okay, which is fine. Okay, that destroys the missile, and then presumably you dodge slightly your trajectory. So the debris from the missile that you've just shot down goes past you because the missile is no longer correcting its trajectory because it's been blown to pieces. So that sort of makes sense, other than the fact that all the components of the missile are still travelling through space. Okay, they're no longer functional, but they're still travelling at whatever the last speed the missile was doing in some sort of trajectory around the sun. It will be in an orbit, even though things don't move in straight lines in space. Okay, they're always subject to whatever the gravity field is where they're nearby. And so and let's say you're the Rossi, what's the name of the ship? Rossi. I just heard the Rocinante. Is firing its multi-cannons at the at the missile to all those bullets, all the ones that don't hit anything, are still travelling through space at very, very high speeds, very, very dangerously. So either you'd have to have, particularly if a lot of ships were doing that a lot of the time, I think you'd quite quickly, because look how quickly we've polluted the orbital space of the Earth with lots and lots of debris, and NASA and various other organisations are tracking all these derelict spacecraft which are flying around the Earth orbit. It doesn't take too much to stretch the imagination to say if you had lots and lots and lots of hostile weaponry-based ships out in space in the solar system, particularly if they're moving between habited planets, relatively close to each other, with only a few million miles apart. Yes, space is big, but you can quite quickly see it might become quite polluted with misspent bullets and missiles. So I don't know. A missile hit by 30mm cannon shells will cease to exist. So maybe they'd be atomized. Maybe that's the trick. Is maybe you have to hit it with things that are so fast that effectively things get atomized and it just become gas. So I don't know. I wonder if misspent ordnance would actually be a problem, or at least extremely dangerous. You might have areas on the map that you would have to basically maybe radar scan. Maybe you would be able to say, okay, we're going to travel between planet 4 and planet 5 today, but as you know, the planet 4 and 5 war took place 50 years ago, and there's quite a lot of missiles and stuff still floating around out there. So we're doing active radar scans to make sure that the area that we're travelling through is actually safe to travel through. I don't know. Well, actually, Drew, says JR1988, all objects move in a straight line in space. It's space-time itself that's that is very true. Okay, at least that's how we think about it. Bullets made of frozen oxygen. Now, I suppose that's true. Actually, yeah, that would work. You could make bullets out of water in space. Anything that would slowly evaporate in space. That's quite a good thought, actually. Haunted Loaf is maybe you make your bullets out of stuff that will degrade over time, because a bullet doesn't need to be explosive. It just needs to be really, really fast. Okay, because if you think about your mass energy equation, the velocity one, it's a half mv squared, isn't it? So if the energy of a projectile is a half mv squared, so if you increase the mass, if you double the mass, you double the energy. But if you double the speed, the energy goes up by a factor of 2, which is way more effective. So it's actually far more effective weapon-wise to make a small, very, very, very fast-moving bullet than it is to either make a large bullet or an explosive bullet. It's just make it as fast as you possibly can. It doesn't really matter what it's made of, as long as it's travelling really, really, really fast. So they have experimented with ice bullets, but there's lots of drawbacks. So yeah, it's a good idea though. NORAD tracks every object in Earth orbit now to avoid collisions. So that's a thing. That's the thing. Now maybe there'd be like interstellar NORAD or no, actually solar system NORAD or something like that. I have a notion that somebody has been killed with an ice bullet. Maybe that was in the film. I mean, ice weapons are definitely a thing, aren't they? So handguns, handbells weaponry. I think laser guns have the charge problem. I think ballistic weapons still seem to me to actually make quite a lot of sense at a handgun sort of level as a personal weapon, because they're simple. There's not much to go wrong with them, and you can recharge them instantly. It's the same sort of argument that you use with petrol cars or gasoline cars for Americans versus electric cars. Okay, it takes you far less time to recharge them. So I wonder if the relative simplicity of ballistic handguns, that you can effectively rearm them really, really quickly. Here's a clip, whack it in your gun, bang, 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 start firing again. The practicality of that will simply win out over more esoteric kind of electric or laser powered weaponry, because it's just more practical at the end of the day, and possibly cheaper to manufacture because it's simple. It's like the AK-47. The reason it's so successful is it works and it's simple. And I wonder if that's going to translate into space combat as well, because you get hit by a bullet in space, it's going to be just as lethal as it is on the ground. Unless your spacesuit is armoured, in which case it's going to be a really bulky thing to deal with. I wonder if the whole Firefly thing, I know it's a space western, but I wonder if that's actually going to be more realistic, because it's simply economically easier to provide those kind of weapons. Haven't touched much on particle beams though. Okay, there was scientist working at a particle collider who accidentally put his head in the path of a proton beam. It very nearly killed him. Oh my god. Instantly burned a microscopic hole through his head. Ow! What does that do to you? What does a microscopic hole do to your head? I shouldn't be laughing. That's really quite almost tragic. But wow. Okay, so particle beam. Okay, so a proton beam. Okay, so what's that going to do? I mean, if you have a beam literally of microscopic particles and you fire those at people, now presumably a particle beam won't work very well in an atmosphere, though, will it? I mean, is it a close range? I mean, how long will a particle beam be effective in an atmosphere? I can imagine it being quite effective in a vacuum. But would it work in an atmosphere? He's well ventilated. Yeah, it changed his behaviour, did it? Wow. Okay. He became a monk. You are very, very bad. You're very, very, very bad indeed. He doesn't get pressure headaches anymore. That's probably the thing of clearing out your sinuses. I'm just going to drill a microscopic hole and let them in. I don't know. I mean, a particle beam. If it's only a few, if it's literally a stream of particles, surely an atmosphere is going to render that ineffective fairly quickly. Now, if it's a big stream of particles, i.e., it's quite wide. It's not just one particle wide. It's billions of particles all streaming out together. Now that sounds. That does sound quite a lot more dangerous. It also depends on the particle being fired. So yes, I suppose that's true. My God, man, drilling holes in his head isn't the answer. It will microwave your brain. Yeah, so you've got the radiation effects of presumably being hit by a particle beam, other than the actual physical trauma. Wintermute says particle beams don't whir. What sound do they make then? Wintermute, do they sort of go zzz instead? I do love the typos. I shouldn't give you a hard time over typos, but it is funny. Particle beams don't whir, they zzz instead. I don't think a proton beam will travel very far. The trouble is, proton is another one. It's a proton beam. It's like the turbo, isn't it? It's a proton quantum turbo laser beam. Yeah, I was going to say particle beams will suffer from diffraction in the atmosphere, so that feels to me like it isn't a really good idea. So it might not only matter where it hits you because we all have holes in our heads anyway. Yeah, so I don't know. But this guy got hit with a proton beam. Was it at quite close range then? I'd be interested to know what happened in the accident. Actually. Okay, so Mad Monk Stuff says the Department of Defense is pushing hard into directed energy technology, particularly lasers, but there's only one weapon that won't be deployed in the field anytime soon: neutral particle beams. Just over a year after announcing a renewed interest in the tech, the Pentagon has decided to shelve research into that, stating that they were not near-term enough. Translation: even with military funding, their service couldn't see a particle beam weapon soon enough to make it worthwhile. Okay. And to be frank, we do fire protons at people on purpose for medical reasons. Dark matter or antimatter guns? Now, antimatter is not going to work. You don't want to fire an antimatter gun in an atmosphere. That would be a very, very bad thing. In fact, I can see an awful lot of practical problems with antimatter guns. Okay, so here we go. If science, health and medicine, the man who put his head inside a particle accelerator while it was switched on. Wow! It was meant to be off, but the warning light was broken. I keep chuckling at this because it sounds so kind of esoteric, but it's quite tragic. Okay, so just popping this one up. Particle accelerator machines that built. Okay. So on July 13th, 1978, particle physicist Anatoly Bogorsky was working his job in the synchrotron, which is the largest particle accelerator in the Soviet Union. The 36-year-old was inspecting a piece of equipment that had malfunctioned when the accident happened. Unbeknownst to him, several safety mechanisms had also failed, meaning that when he leaned over to get a good look at his task, a proton beam shot through the back of his head at close to the speed of light. Oh my God. Or at least close to the speed of light than you'd like a proton beam to be travelling when it shoots clean through your face. At first he felt no pain. He didn't know what had happened, as he had seen a light brighter than 1,000 suns, as well as the gravity of the situation. At this point he didn't tell us on, merely contemplated his day's work before heading home and waiting for the inevitable to happen. Absorbing 500 rads of radiation would normally lead to death. He didn't know he'd been hit with between 200,000 to 300,000 rads. In the night, his face began to swell beyond recognition, prompting him to visit the doctors the following morning. From there, he was taken to a clinic in Moscow, though largely so his death could be observed, rather than for any expectation his life could be saved. Oh my goodness me. The next few days saw his skin peel off around the entry and exit wound, showing a clean path burned through his skull, skin and brain. My goodness me. Remarkably, he did not die. The brain tissue continued to burn away over the ensuing years, and his face became paralysed on the left-hand side, where his hearing was also lost. Weird still, as he aged, the right-hand side of his head showed signs of ageing, while the left did not. Wow, weird. Over the next few decades, he experienced seizures but remained functional, continued to work as a physicist, and completed a PhD. As far as people who have put their heads in a particle accelerator go, and to be fair, that's a demographic of one, he was pretty lucky. The narrow focus of the beam, though it caused massive damage, likely kept the brain's damage limited to an area of the brain that he could live without. Wow, okay, so don't put your head... Tonight's safety tip, everybody. Don't put your head in a particle accelerator. Okay, cancelling visit to CERN. It was meant to be off, but the warning light. Oh, no. Okay. Has everyone taken note of that? Okay, that's important. That's important. Okay. Tonight's stream, important safety tip. Oh my goodness me. Okay, so basically what we're saying is particle accelerator beams are quite dangerous, but they probably don't kill you quickly enough to be useful as a hand weapon, I suspect. A Russian piece of equipment was maintained correctly, nothing new there. No, I mean, it wasn't. That's right. It's terrifying, isn't it? All particles, you see, that would never happen in the US or the UK, would it? Because there'd be a massive warning label stuck on it saying particle accelerators are bad for your health. Please read the enclosed leaflet before switching on your particle accelerator. Um, wow. Okay. Wow, that's well. I mean, I've learned something tonight. I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely learned something about it. So they used to assemble. Lucky Luigi says they used to assemble nukes by hand. Solid uranium can be handled as long as it's not critical. One day, someone dropped. Oh my god! Someone dropped one half of the nuke core and the other one, instantly creating a critical mass. He separated them instantly, but still died horribly from radiation. Yeah, so, radiation. Um, oh dear. And here we are discussing when something similar happened in the US. Avoiding the sharp edges. Does it? We wonder why particle accelerators are underground. I can kind of understand now. How do you put your head in a particle accelerator anyway? But there we go. So anyway, so particle weapons may be a bit too far ahead. To be fair, I still think it's quite hard to beat a basic, simple ballistic weapons, particularly as I think it was Wintermute pointed out. You can now get them with oxidizing propellant, so that they will work in the vacuum. They're going to be simple. They're going to be cheap. They're going to be still as lethal as they are on the Earth. They're probably even better on in zero G in some ways, because if you target them well, you don't have to worry about the effects of gravity dropping your bullet out of line, and you don't have to worry about the effects of its velocity being reduced by the atmosphere. So your effective range in space for a bullet is effectively infinite, isn't it? So I think so, and this is the sort of direction I'm beginning to travel with my novel, where I'm trying to take a reasonably hard science fiction approach. Is that ballistic weapons are still going to work well in space, infinite minus in space velocity, depending on where you're firing them, obviously. So in my sci-fi series, what I'm expecting to have is missiles for ship-to-ship combat, with sort of multi-cannon stuff in a defensive capability, not so much to attack the other ship, but basically to shoot missiles down. And for hand-to-hand combat, to basically rely on simple, accessible ballistic handgun kind of stuff. The Rossi's main gun was a railgun. I think, and having done some reading up on these sort of things, it just seems that the practicality of those things is going to be the downsides, of course, of having ammunition aboard a ship is that you've got a limited supply. A laser gun, basically, if it's powered by, I don't know, let's say some super duper space fusion reactor which can turn fusion power directly into electricity, has effectively unlimited ammo. So that may be an advantage, because obviously with any kind of ballistic weaponry, you have ammo. You'll eventually run out of ammo depending on the situation you're in. And that's another point. I mean, Wintermute is exactly spot on there. Don't forget, handheld weapons have to be simple enough to be used and maintained by the average man in the street. Now, the problem with a laser gun is it going to handle being knocked about? Okay, so in your typical rough and tumble space opera, where they're sliding down chutes and swinging across chasms and rescuing the princess and getting into balls and stuff, is a laser gun going to keep working? Practically. I mean, imagine, for those of you who remember CD players, okay, you knock the laser thing just a tiny bit out of alignment and the CD won't play with it. I would imagine laser guns and things like it would be quite precision instruments. I can see them being mounted on ships, because at least then they're protected from a certain amount of wear and tear, aren't they? But as handheld weapons, do you think they would actually work? I mean, and what's the chance of you pulling out your laser gun and it kind of going because it doesn't work in the spur of a moment? Whereas most of the time you could rely on a gun to fire, because it's a very at the end of the day, it's a very simple mechanism, isn't it? And plasma pistols, blasters, Gauss webs, they all need a power supply. Exactly. So either they've got inbuilt batteries, or they've got an external power pack which you have to kind of carry around. So if your ship has millions of rounds of ammo in it, I might have trouble explaining that at customs. So I, and spears and axes would still work. I mean, chucking things, bludgeoning people to death, bludgeoning people will still work, at close quarters. Even crossbows would work if you think about it. Yeah, you're quite right, Sean. Because if you've got all you need is a projectile which is capable of piercing, a spacesuit and piercing the body, right? Now a crossbow bolt will do that quite effectively as well. That could be an even cheaper, space weapon. So I think ballistic weapons are still going to have the edge over the sort of high tech super stuff. Future weapons will have DRM locked ammo so you don't buy. But I think that's another thing you can play around. This is something I'm contemplating, and Firefly did this as well, in the sense that you've got the sort of high tech core worlds in Firefly where they've got super duper technology and advanced stuff, and then the further out you get out towards the rim, the more run down things become, and people basically have to rely on simple stuff. So out on the rim, everybody's using firearms, whereas in the kind of core worlds where there's high tech, they've got this sort of super high tech kind of energy weapons, which basically aren't as good. The return of archery in space. The biggest danger in space is the micrometer. Yeah, so that's right. So all you need to do is make sure you stand your, get your. So tactics in space battles is something I think maybe we should cover next week, because there's a lot there to unpack as well. Because all that stuff about manoeuvring and getting close enough to actually deploy your weapons in space, and then the three-dimensional thinking and all that sort of stuff, stealth in space, all those sort of things. We should definitely go back and have a look at that one again. The one thing about worrying about running out of, as in most battles, you're more likely to be dead than worrying about running out of ammo because you won't last long enough. So that's true as well. So the casualty rates in those sort of melee situations are quite high, aren't they? We tend to think of, because of movies, you tend to think of people going, "Damn, I'm out of ammo again," and it isn't really like that. Somebody stands up, bang, they're shot, they're dead. That's it. They're out of the game. So power is probably a big issue, but in a lot of games, laser weapons take ammo as well, which might be interpreted as individual power source. So there are possibilities there. I'm just not sure. I think a laser weapon might be potentially quite a fragile device, and not so much up to the rigors of being clunked about in the spaceship until it's required. The last thing you need, as Han Solo was. So would probably say, you want something reliable at your side, kid. You don't want to have a laser gun. When you pick it up, it basically goes, batteries have lost charge, or click here to power up. It'll be on in 30 seconds. You just want to pull the trigger and bang. I don't know. So that's quite good. So tactics in space battles, just try playing the ball game based on the verse. Yeah, so I've come across that one. That is quite cool. That's quite good. Lasers will explode. Or just short circuits, but I presume it would have. I mean, I know fuses and circuit breakers are lost technology in the future, as Star Trek has shown many times. But one would hope that in a sensible design of space laser pistol, there would be some sort of fuse that would stop it overloading and exploding in your hand. In Babylon 5, the PPG sidearms are powered by an energy cap that is connected to the back of the weapons. Yeah, so people have thought about that, and there is a sense that in sci-fi, obviously, you've got to go with stuff sometimes that looks cool, because you're trying to demonstrate that you're in the future, and sometimes a traditional firearm just doesn't cut the mustard there, because it's not spacey enough, it's not science fiction enough. We need better weapons. And that's before you get onto stun settings on things like phasers, which just render the people kind of immobile or something like that. I mean, maybe there's better ways. I mean, maybe a pitched man-on-man battle in a space environment just simply wouldn't happen because of other practicalities as well. 90% of new recruits are sent back on the first day of duty because their laser gun blew up in their hand. Uh, Some sci-fi RPGs I played with explain energy-based weapons as essentially having unlicensed nuclear accelerators as power cells. So yeah, so that, and you know, maybe in the future it's reasonable to postulate that something like a fusion reactor could be miniaturized to the size of a battery. It's not beyond the imagination, is it? Mad Monk Soft has got to go. See you on Thursday. Take care, my friend. Be good. So you know, so things like that. You know, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility. So if you had a few, let's say a AA battery, or what's the sensible size one, the C or the D cell battery, you know, a reasonable chunky size that you can kind of slot into something. If that was like a portable fusion reactor, I mean, that could probably last quite a while, couldn't it? So, you know, and if there's some cool future tech that can turn fusion energy directly into electricity, say, or directly into light to make a laser beam, maybe that sort of works. I don't know. So there we go. Those are all sort of possibilities. Stun setting on the Colt 45 is when you hit someone. Does that actually work? I mean, the whole that's another thing that's overused, and not just in sci-fi, of course. Yeah, the old chop to the back of the neck, or the whack over the head with the gun, or the smack around the face with the butt of the rifle. That's quite a common one. Yeah, the opponent goes down, is knocked unconscious, and then somehow climbs back to their feet after about a few minutes, looking a bit groggy but basically okay. I don't think that's very realistic either. I'm pretty sure if I was knocked down by a handgun on the back of the neck, I probably, quite possibly, wouldn't get back up again. Or somebody smacked me around the chops with the butt of a rifle. Can imagine that doing a fair bit of damage, actually. So I don't know. Hit them with a stunning smile. That's definitely the way to stun them. Yeah, if you don't knock them out, you've definitely annoyed them. That's right. Yeah, so that there's I mean, the Vulcan neck pinch, which is a shame it's not a realistic thing, because that's quite cool, isn't it? But whacking people around the head with things and then allowing them to get up later on is I'm not quite sure that's. Pistol whipping, hitting someone with a gun is considered assault with a deadly weapon. A Colt 45 is solid metal and it weighs a bit. Yeah, so it's going to do some damage, isn't it? So I don't know how realistic boarding or attacking a spaceship would be with a kind of marine style crew of people, because it would be very difficult to get aboard a ship that didn't want to let you aboard, because presumably a spaceship would have a door whereby an airlock that would be only controlled from the inside for most of the time, so it would have some sort of security. So for an attacking force of Marines to board a spaceship, I mean, they'd have to cut through the door. Now you wouldn't want to, I'd imagine you wouldn't want to cut through the hull of the ship, because you depressurize the ship entirely. So if you were trying to capture a person alive, that wouldn't be a very good idea. Boarding torpedoes. Okay, so boarding torpedoes. So what? Presumably that sort of connects to the outside of the ship in an airtight sort of way, and then burns a hole through the hull so that the person in the boarding torpedo can then slide into the ship somehow. But the problem is you're fairly vulnerable, I would have thought, to being picked off in a boarding torpedo. Just use the transporter, of course. Yes, I forgot about the transporter. Skulls are surprisingly strong. Most animals have evolved to stay conscious as much as possible, especially when they're under threat. Knocking people out is mostly a cliche, but you can certainly cause a brain injury that kills someone later. Yes, that's very true. Now, smashing through the wall of a spaceship, the problem with that, of course, is unless you've got a good air seal, you're going to vent the entire atmosphere of the internal ship into space, which may, if you're trying to capture or rescue, shall I say, the princess, may work against you. That may not be the best thing. And if your prize is the ship, you don't really want to damage it too much. So if your prize is to capture the vessel and fly it off somewhere, you probably want to keep it with its atmosphere intact. So I don't know quite how a boarding operation on the ship would work. If all the ship is pressurised and there are no sealed compartments, so it depends. If your ship goes into battle, I mean, maybe you'd adopt the approach that you have with the Expanse, where they basically everyone into spacesuits and depressurize the ship, such that the ship can take some damage in its depressurized state and not be a concern. The force field will keep the ship pressurized, of course. Most hostile boarding wouldn't really be forcing you away, and more pointing us with the guns at the ship and telling them to open the doors if they didn't want to be blown up. So there is that, yes. So there's basically threat of destruction. It would be silly to have no bulkheads on a pressurized ship. So yeah, so you presumably then your spacecraft would be divided into airtight compartments, so that if one of them did get breached, the others wouldn't be breached, and only people in that area would be affected. So that kind of does make sense. But then if you're an invading force trying to take over that ship, what do we do? So hostile boarding wouldn't really be forcing you in. So that's interesting. Would you be able to make good on your threat? I suppose you could blow the ship to pieces. So the choice for the attacked ship would be destroyed or comply. An early Bond film, You Only Live Twice, I think captured manned space capsule by engulfing them in a bigger ship. Yeah, so I do remember that one. That's right, I'd forgotten about that one. So I suppose that's another way. So basically, it's a variation on grappling irons, isn't it? So if you want to capture another ship, you basically lock onto it and then haul it away. So as long as your ship has got the ability to manage the extra mass of the other vessel, then you can basically just pinch the ship out of space and maybe that's the best way to do piracy. Is you forget about what's inside the ship, just pinch the entire ship. Maybe that's the easiest way to do it. So that's getting more into sort of spaceship tactics, isn't it? But I think there's a lot to be said for the ballistic weapons still in a space environment. I think they actually, because they have the virtue of being simple, and easy to maintain and easy to use, and cheap. So I think the economics of personal weaponry in space will lend themselves to that, because at the end of the day you just need something that's deadly and cheap and easy to use. That's simplicity quite often bears out. That's the best weapon for the job. You don't need to destroy the ship, just disable its engine. Yeah, so that's a good point actually, guys, isn't it? So I think boarding, especially as shown in the Expanse, is generally done on a ship that can't manoeuvre, and they want to get someone on the ship, so someone has to board. So, and Wintermute's quite right. You don't need to destroy the ship, just disable its weapons, disable its engines, because if it can't move, it can't run away. So then you can basically say, well, you guys can either stay here and asphyxiate slowly, and then we'll take over your ship, or you can give up now. So you're kind of appealing to them, and you basically either, as a pirate, you either wait for all the crew to die. Or you maybe just blow a hole in a small bit of it to evacuate the atmosphere, and then just let the crew die, and then you basically just take what's valuable. It depends what you're after, I suppose. If you're after the cargo, just disable the ship. Don't need to do any more than that, do you? And then just haul it off, and then when you get to your pirate lair, or where it is, basically you force your way into the cargo hold and pinch what you want. And then, if there is a boarding issue at that point, then you can basically have a firefight again. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Maybe we'll discuss that one next week. Stay here means I hope a rescue team will get here before you smash into the planet you were heading towards. Yeah, there is that as well. Depending on which part of your voyage you're in. Because if you've been accelerating and decelerating, in the kind of Newtonian physics kind of spaceship sort of way, then you might be at a really, really high velocity. Shooting outside the solar system unless you can slow down. But it could be quite an expensive thing to do, to ambush another ship, couldn't it? Because first, you've got to catch up with it. B, you've got to, if you want to capture the ship, then you've got to deal with its velocity and manage that, which might be expensive on fuel. Depends how the economics of those things work. Boarding torpedoes, destroyed engines, and smashing into a planet. And you have to find it first. Very good, Sean. So we'll cover spaceship battle tactics, I think, next week. But it's been interesting. So apart from don't stick your head in the particle accelerator, ballistic weapons still seem to have their place. I think laser weapons might be a bit too complicated. I think we sort of came up with railguns, kind of almost too complicated for their own good as well. And particle weapons may be a bit too far in the future to be effective and won't work in the atmosphere. So there we go. Some conclusions. Some health and safety tips as well. I think that's an excellent stream and a good place to stop. So we'll do space combat tactics. I think next week. I think that will be quite good. And you can keep your bow and arrow in the future. Still be effective, Glenn. I think that might be quite cool. Anyway, that's enough of me waffling on about the space torpedoes. But that was good. That was good. I learned a few things about that. That was really cool. Right. Hopefully my streaming schedule will be the same as it normally is. So Thursday should be No Man's Sky, Friday should be Star Citizen, and Saturday should be the retro stream once more. Yay! Get around and do some more Wing Commander Prophecy. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a fantastic week ahead, my friends. Be good. Look after each other. And I will see you hopefully later on in the week. Be good. Don't stick your head in the particle accelerator. Okay. Top tip for this evening. Take care, my friends. Have fun. Right on, and I will see you later in the week. Be good. Take care, my friends. Bye bye now.